Alright, y'all guys settle down back there in the back. I sound like in the schoolroom back there, the kids talking on the back row. We're going to settle y'all down, so maybe we can try to teach y'all something in the back there. We might not have accomplished that, but we'll give it a shot. As we talked about this afternoon, I'm going to talk a little bit about phosphites. You're on the field tour yesterday. Bill test on it with one of the chemicals he had there on the pallet. We talked a little bit about it at that time. The talk I'm going to do is kind of broken into a couple of different sections. The first section will deal more with, I'm going to kind of tell you what we found out from some of the studies we've done. Some will be rehashed for some of you went to the southeastern, some of you haven't seen it probably. Just touch on some of the stuff we saw in the last couple of studies we've done, but then to talk a little bit more about actually using phosphite and some of the things you may need to be concerned about using it at that time. So we're going to get started with one of the first studies that we did was in 2007. This had to do with the IR4 program. We got funding actually to do some studies looking at pesticides that they felt were biopesticides, a little bit safer to use, not as harsh as some of the other fungicides that were out there. So we tested 3 different ones. At that time, they were really high on silicon type materials. So that was one that they were wanting us to test most was Seal Matrix, but we threw in phosphite as just one of those chemicals. It was new on the market. If you look at phosphite, they haven't been on the market that long as far as the number of products that you see right now. Because Alliet was one of the first ones that came out, and they had a patent on that. And so until the patent went off for Alliet, you really didn't see the explosion of products that you see right now, where we have 25, 30 different products out there that are phosphite products. So we were testing those particular chemicals right there. And just to summarize some things, like I said, I'm not going to go into great detail on these. I'm going to kind of give you the bottom line on some of them. We've got some other stuff. But we were looking at Kiowa as one of the trees that we looked at. And in this particular study, the way that we did ratings on the scale was just on a 1 to 10 scale. So the higher the number, the more scale. When you got to 10, it's done for black. When you hit it down accordingly by percentage. But what you just find is the phosphite right here, you see it has 1.6 and 2.0 scab ratings. This was done probably in August, and this was at the end of the season before shuck split. If you compare that to bound, enable, alternation, it was not significantly different. So what we saw was that the phosphites looked pretty decent in the test. If you look at what they were most interested in, it was pretty bad. It got even worse as we moved on to cultivar with a little more susceptibility in slide. If you start comparing how those work, then you can see that the Seal Matrix was around the 90% of the shuck was black. Same thing with controls. The phosphites about 15 to 25% lesions on there, and even the control and the abound and enable to give you better control in that situation. But it did give us some promise that, well, maybe the phosphites can be used in the program. Because this was the first time we'd ever tested them. We saw some positive things, just as these were just small scale tests. So with that in mind, the data we have, we went ahead and applied for a specialty crop grant. And with the specialty crop grant, let's see this, I'm getting ahead of myself. There gives an idea. You can see how bad the checks were. Phosphite by itself full season. This is phosphite and abound alternated, and then abound and enable alternated through the season. So it gives you some idea about what kind of control you got full season using these products. So like I said, there's a lot of different materials that were out there, so we decided, like I say, to look at those different materials and write a grant with the specialty crops grant. We were able to get a grant for 2 years to look at a couple of different things. We did this through the Louisiana Department of Agriculture. 2 ideas that we had in mind was first just to look at some different compounds. There's fertilizer and phosphite products out there. There's fungicide labeled products and phosphite out there. So we want to compare both of those just to see as foliar applications, can we control scab or not. This is going to be a much larger scale test, full tree sprays and everything. But the second thing we were more interested in was looking also, because phosphite compounds are a systemic fungicide, was to see could we use those as a soil application, which had never been tried before. So with that in mind, we also did a application of soil only, no foliar applications of the same products, just to see if we could control scab as a soil application. So we either had foliar applications, we had soil drenches around the trees, so hopefully the root system would pick up. And using this particular test, the scale that we used was out the Concord. There's one done by the Hunter-Roberts scale. You can see that, of course, no scab, you get 1, 10% infection, just a couple of lesions gives you a 2. So basically, if you get to a 5, you have almost a solid black whatsoever in one. If you look at candy, this was done down at Point P Parish, Earl Days Orchard down there. Like in 2011, we had very little scab pressure really in 2011, so you didn't see that much scab anywhere in the orchard, no matter what it was. The control wasn't that bad. And even that scab infection occurred very, very late in the season. This was probably late September when that came in. So in 2012, we saw a lot more pressure. I'll go ahead and note that when we talked about earlier, I said we didn't get our applications on early enough. We made our first application in this test on May the 1st, and it wasn't early enough. We had some scab already in the orchard before that, and so that's where you can see the ratings a little bit low on this particular orchard. We had some scab damage already in the orchard before we got the first applications on, and then we applied 6 additional applications through the season. So with candy, definitely you have a lot of scab pressure there, and almost a solid black pecan. These were falling off the tree in this situation here, and you get some protection from the phosphite chemicals, not that great though in this orchard when we have a lot of early infection. If you look at the nuts, that picture doesn't show up real well, but you can see a lot of green up here and very little up here. It'll show a lot better on the next test, which was up to Roger Wilson, unless it's still can't get on the ground, I forgot. This ground application, you can see that you really get no protection as a soil application. Very light here, but as a soil application here, we just saw no systemic action for the phosphite whatsoever protecting against scab. Looking at desirables, I said we switched to a different orchard here, to Roger Wilson's orchard. Looking at desirables as the scab rating here, on a fuller application, you can see that we got very good protection with the phosphite materials. This is phosphite only, and we didn't switch to any other chemicals. I'm not recommending any of you to put that test out. We want you to rotate your chemicals, but for us to test something, sometimes we put it full season, one chemical only, and that's what we did in this test. So, full season phosphite, gave you almost as good a protection as a commercial fungicide application, and this would have been rotating Elast, Super 10, Abound, rotated through during the season, and so you can see it compares very favorably with what we see as standard rotation. Soil application, let's look at foliar first. There's your control, which you can often see. I did have scab in the orchard. It's pretty much obvious that we had that. Like I said, phosphorol, phosphite, give you excellent protection season long. If I've got this much pressure and get this kind of protection with no other chemicals being used, it tells me it works pretty well. It's not a super strong fungicide, but it does give you protection, so I have no problem in seeing it as a single application during a standard rotation with your chemical. If you look at the ground applications, however, same situation. A lot of scab, and there really gave no protection whatsoever. The controls, very good, but pretty much due to the same chemicals, phosphite applied in the soil, phosphorol applied in the soil, really gave no protection whatsoever as a systemic ground application, so I can't really recommend that. I was hoping for homeowners that might be a thing you can use in fire for aphids in that way. I thought maybe that'd work with the fungicide for scab, but it doesn't work at all. At least at the rates that we tried. I'm not going to say it doesn't work. I won't say definitely won't. We're going to get some stronger rates and stuff, but at the rates that we did apply at, we really saw no protection whatsoever. One of the things we did notice when we applied the phosphite, though, is something we'll be following up on, and that's the reason when I get to the scheduling in just a moment, we're going to talk about that a little more. We noticed we had some actually delayed check split at both different orchards that we looked at, the candies and the desirables. And so we went in, initially started trying to harvest the candies. We went in and thought we could harvest here. We had 100% of the controls we could harvest, 100% of the standard commercial we could harvest. We could harvest any of the trees that received phosphite. Just went back a week later, and it took 2 weeks later before I could get all the samples harvested, so I actually had check split enough to harvest the samples. So with that in mind, knowing it was a problem with the candies, which actually had check split earlier than desirable, we went to Roger Wilson's orchard then and said, let's just choose a particular day and go in there and rate how much check split we have. So we rated 30 clusters on each of the trees, 6 trees in each application. And you see we had almost 90% check split occurring on the controls and over 80% on the standard here, but you see as few as 20% on the Nutrify in this situation. So we just saw a lot of delay in check split, and that's something I think we have to be concerned with as a late season application. So that's something I would like to follow up on. And so right now I only recommend using the phosphites generally in that mid-season. Like I said, Bill talked about early season. If you want to use it for glomerulin or something like that, as a mixture with some other fungicides, but I don't really want to say let's use it really late season. I'm talking August, September, last sprays that you can put out until I have a better idea whether or not this is truly just an aberration or if it's actually something that's actually occurring. I see it 2 different cultivars at 2 different locations. That tells me that there might be something there. So I will follow that up for sure. And we will be this fall. So just on the research that we've done up to this point, we found whole applications work exceptionally well. We looked at phosphites, and so like I said, I recommend without any hesitation is using them as one of your fungicides in your application program that you do year round. I still point out that you need to rotate the chemicals up, don't use them, the same chemical 2 or 3 times, as we've seen some chemicals done that way. At the moment right now, I'm going to say soil applications, don't even consider it at the moment. Like I say, what we saw in the 2 years that we looked at it, it really just didn't seem to work. We had hopes that being systemic could come up in the root system and give us some protection, but it's just not there right now. But we'll go ahead and look at some heavier applications and some different application techniques and so on, see if that helps out or not. So I'm not going to give up on it just yet, but we're going to go back and look at it a little bit more. And as I said earlier, we solved the structure split problems this fall, well, not this fall, but late summer. We're going to go back to some of the orchards and actually put applications on in August and probably into September, and I may even do, if it's not structure split yet, even 1st of October. Just see if I put on stuff really late, am I going to see an effect there or not? Because when you look at the 2 orchards that we looked at, the candy orchard, I didn't see, I saw more delay in the candy orchard, but we actually had our last application closer to structure split because candy splits earlier. So we only had probably 2.5 to 3 weeks between the last application before structure split initiated. Whereas the Desire we had a little bit larger window there, and I didn't see as much delay. So maybe that if you applied 6 weeks before structure split is supposed to initiate, you won't have any problem whatsoever. That's just something we're going to look at later on in this fall and try to see if we can determine if there is something there or not. Now just look at some different things. I've tested a lot of different phosphorus acid products that are out there. There's a lot more that I haven't tested, but if you just look at the ones that I've tested, and the common question I would ask for most of you are all the phosphite acid products equal? And as a grower, what would y'all's reply be? Y'all the same? Would you interchange them any way you wanted to without any hesitation? Have you ever thought about looking at pH? Everybody thinks, well, pH, they're phosphorus acid. It's going to be acidic. Don't have to worry about anything there. If you actually look at the acidity of them, however, you find agrifos, yes, it is fairly acidic. It works pretty good as a buffer, probably 5.5 to 6. But look at phosphorol. 7.16, it'll run 7.1 to 7.2. Okay, so now you're looking at an alkaline product. Now I may be concerned about insecticides I'm putting in there, like Evidan, if I'm spraying Evidan, very sensitive to alkaline hydrolysis. Okay, so you can't really say that all the phosphite compounds are the same because you see a lot of difference in their pHs, and also if you look at why is that? You look at the makeup of, phosphorol. It's a mixture of potassium phosphite, sodium phosphite, and ammonium phosphite. So it has multiple products in there mixed together. If you look at the ones that have lower pHs, like the agrifos, it's strictly potassium phosphite only. So you need to look at those labels to see, what is contained in those different products. Are they a mixture of different phosphites, the ammoniums, the sodiums, and the potassium, or is it potassium nitrate, potassium phosphite only? So you need to take that into consideration. When I look at mixes that I've done over the past, I've measured the pH on some of the different mixes that I've done. Just see the range, they're often very close. The water I use was slightly acidic, it's 6.3. The water in most of the tests I've done, so it lowers the pH down to about 6.9, 6.95, but it's still higher than what you want to have the pesticides in there. So we know there's some differences there. Another question that I received when we were at the Southeastern meeting was we had several people mention about the foliar burn using phosphite compounds. And at that time, Jim Brenneman, I know Bill asked a lot of different people at the meeting, and no one was really that sure about why we were seeing the burn or if we could avert that problem. So with that in mind, I took a lot of the same chemicals I've tested in the past, and I decided to go out and I'm just going to put out all these chemicals at 2 quarts per 100. That's the mid rate. Standard rate's 1 to 3 quarts per acre for most of these compounds. I'll put out 2 quarts per 100 gallons of water to see if I can get any burn. And I went through and applied all the chemicals with no fungicide, no other additions to it, just fungicide only, no surfactants or anything. I got no burn whatsoever. I mean, I used all 8 products that I had on Phosphite, and I didn't use any foliar burn whatsoever, using just the fungicide by itself. That's 2-quart rate. You can see these are a couple of different ones that were sprayed, and there's just no foliar burn there. So I didn't get foliar burn that way. So I decided I'd continue on with some other things like let's try some different surfactants and stuff. And so I took Phosphite as my fungicide and went through and sprayed all the trees with different combinations of these. You know, I used things that were surfactants, buffers, conditioners. I tried a lot of different chemicals that you would have in your tank as a routine thing, either as a buffer or as a surfactant, to see could I induce any foliar burn that way. Also at the 2-quart rate. And at the 2-quart rate, I really didn't burn anything either. And so I said, well, I'm not going to give up that easy. So I went to the higher rate. I decided, let's go to 3 quarts per 100. And with 3 quarts per 100, I was able to actually induce some burn with a single application. But it's going to be not very much. You'll see the very typical burn that you see where the chemical runs to the bottom of the leaf and it singes the bottom off. And this is very, very typical of what you will see with phosphite sprays, especially if you get too much surfactant in there or too much chemical in there at a higher rate, is wherever it drains to the bottom of the leaf, you'll see burn there. And here's another example, shows up a little bit better, where it flowed down to this point here, flowed to this tip, and so you'll see the foliar burn only at the lower edges of the leaves. And whether it's leaves sideways or on tip or anything else, you'll get the foliar burn occurring in that situation. But like I said, I was not able to induce very much foliar burn. Like I said, it was very minimal. Even going to the higher rate and using standard rates for all the buffers and everything. What I generally saw was the surfactants themselves probably gave me a little bit more tip burn stuff than say just using the buffers and stuff. So if you're wondering about maybe need to buffer your water down, lowering the pH, I generally lower, when you look at the buffers, lowering the pH probably 0.4 units of a pH unit. If I started at 6, standard buffer drops it down to about 5.6, 5.7. Dropping the pH really didn't have that much effect on any type of burn that you saw. But the surfactants themselves, the really good surfactants, induce and things like that, I saw a little bit more burn using those surfactants than I did the buffers. So that's what I was just talking about here. So I mean, if you look at induce, as a Weber spreader, an 80 spray 80, I saw a little bit more burn with. But as far as the buffer here that was used, or the Quest right here, as a water conditioner, those definitely lowered the pH by, like I say, 0.3 to 0.4 pH units. So I did not really see any more additional burn due to that lowering of pH. I would have just using the surfactant. So just looking at foliar applications, phosphite, fungicides. If you're using the middle to lower rates and using the chemical by itself, I've not been able to induce any of the burns, so that shouldn't be an issue in any of your orchards that you're applying, at least from the tests that I've done. If you do go to the higher rates, you feel you really have to go at least to the 3-quart rate, which is the highest rate on all the compounds. And you also have surfactant. Yes, there's a good chance you will probably have some foliar burn on your trees. It won't be anything major, it'll just be where it ran down to the tips and stuff. But as you continue, if you use it more than one time, you will compound the problem. That's what I saw when I was doing it full season. Was the first application, you burn just a little bit of leaf. Time came through the second, and the third, and the fourth application, you have a little more foliar burn as you move through the season by continuing to apply the chemicals. But the way that we recommend you use the compound, you should have very minimal burn. Like I said, we're not recommending you use it over once in your spray rotation. We're not saying you use it full season at all. So a single application, you should have very minimal burn, so I'm not that concerned about that, even though that has been a question about the chemical in the past. And that kind of summarizes everything. If you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to entertain that. And just,
The delayed stroke split, did that have any impact on quality? Were those methods any better or worse than the?
No, it actually had no effect on the quality. When you looked at it, we showed them out, looked at the percentage and the quality of this and everything. The delay that you saw really had no influence. I didn't see any additional bipiperate because the chokes didn't open or anything like that, which is one of the things I did look for when they didn't open. I was like, well, this is setting me up for having a lot of bipiperate in some of those. And I saw no additional bipiperate. I saw no decrease in kernel quality. I just saw a delay in choke speed, and they just would not open. And over time, they opened naturally, but there was that 2 or 3 week delay which occurred.
Do you have some thoughts on the timing of the phosphite application that were more responsible than others for the delay in such?
Well, I mean, what I was saying was, when I looked at where I got the greatest delay, it was the closest to the last application I made with phosphite. So I'm wondering if you have a certain interval period of time there, you won't see that delay, because it's been a long enough period when the check should occur. And that's the reason this fall what I'd like to do is go ahead and say if I'm using desirable, I'll put an application on in late August, mid-September, and maybe it depends on if I get the check split yet, very late in September, just to see the closer I get to the check split times, do I see additional delay in that particular pecan variety? And hopefully that way maybe we can see what time period we're looking at where we can safely apply the chemical and really not have to worry about any check delay whatsoever. It may be that you need to have it, 6 weeks before you expect the check split on a particular variety. This would be okay. But right now I can't answer that, but that's what we're going to look at this fall is just to get as close as we can to check split, just see can we keep pushing that check split back on using the chemical and then see if that works or not. Anything else? Everybody ate lunch?